Here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Journey into Comics with your hosts, Nate Phillips and Brandon Stone.
I am a god, you dull creature.
Hey everybody, welcome to Journey into Comics, the #1 rated podcast on our Facebook page. I'm here with, of course, our lovable co-host Nate.
Hello.
Hello, Nate. What's up? How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well, dude. How are you?
I'm all right. It's been a little while since we talked to each other.
I know, like 4 seconds.
4 seconds. It's been a while.
No, but really, it's been a while. We, you know, it's so weird. We've got this show, and a lot of times we save all of our conversation for the show because sometimes that's just the best conversation we end up having, you know?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're just driving around in the car with somebody having a conversation, sometimes you're like, stop it, save it for the show.
Yep. I'm just like, fucking shut up. I've got better things to deal with, and I got to remember that for the show. You're making me lose my train of thought. So today, what we have, ladies and gentlemen, is we're going to do a very special episode. It's our Breaking Bad retrospective. We decided we're going to do these special episodes once a month. We're going to do something. We don't know what the episode last month was. Brandon, our Civil War debate, which I think I won. No, I don't know.
Now, come on now. What happens? What happens in the comics, bro? What happens?
Yeah, I know. Fucking Steve dies, you dickhead.
Hey,
like, of course.
Yeah. Go government.
All right, so anyways, folks, the plan for today, we're going to just talk about how fucking amazing Breaking Bad is, was, and will forever be. This show changed a lot of people's lives, and it just drove such a strong original story. Vince Gilligan created something that I don't think could ever honestly be topped.
No, this show, I absolutely love this show because it is the opposite normally of what you see in a show. It follows this really decent person going down this really horrible path.
I mean, he's Breaking Bad, you know.
Oh, of course. I mean, hence the show. But I love how it's like, take for example, there's another show out there with someone who does awful things, you know, Dexter, and his path is almost like the reverse. He slowly becomes a better person throughout the length of the show, and with Walt, it's the exact opposite.
Yeah.
He's a really decent guy, and by the end of it, he is a complete monster.
And, you know, one thing we have to praise Vince Gilligan because at least he didn't turn Walt into a lumberjack. I mean, let's be fucking honest here.
No, but, you know, he definitely did look like one by the time the series finale kind of came
You
through.
know, he really did there at the end of Season 5. We get back to the, Felina, the grand finale, which we'll probably end up talking about that a little bit. But how we wanted to do this today is Brandon and I have both picked our favorite episodes. We're going to go through and just talk about them and talk about how great they are and little tidbits of information we know. We've got a guest listener today. Miss Veronica's with us, so thanks for coming on and listening.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No problem. So, Brandon, I'm going to let you get started, man. What was your favorite episode from Season 1 overall?
Okay, overall, I mean, of course we all know that Season 1 is the shortest season because of the writer's strike of '07. So we didn't actually get the full thought of, or the full intended plan for Season 1. But what we got was really great. And my favorite episode is the episode called And the Bags in the River.
Oh, yeah. Hell yeah.
And pretty much, this is the aftermath of the idea of trying to dissolve a body, right? That's how the episode starts. Because Walt basically tells Jesse, we need to get rid of this body, we need to get rid of the evidence, let's dissolve it, we need a plastic tub. And Jesse, in his brilliance, decides, I'll put him in the bathtub, bitch. And
oh, and what a gross scene that was, you know?
yes. But this episode starts right after that, you know. And it comes up, the main thing of this episode is the whole conversation between Walt and Crazy Eight.
Mm-hmm.
And to the point where, like, they have a good, what I guess could be equal to a heart-to-heart with each other. Of course, but that happens after Walt tries to bring him a sandwich. And then passes out, and the plate, I don't know why he wouldn't bring him a paper plate, it's a sandwich. Maybe Jesse just doesn't have. Maybe he rolls all the paper plates in a really big fat once. I don't know, but he did. The plate breaks. He wakes up. He cleans it up. Goes back upstairs. He's gonna make him another sandwich, and eventually they end up just chit chatting and drinking beer together. Just having a good heart to heart, you know. And of course, Crazy Eight doesn't want to die, right? He's gonna say pretty much anything that he can to let Walt let him go. By the end of it, though, it's pretty interesting. Is Walt decides to let him go because him and Jesse had discussed that Jesse had his thing. He had to go take care of the dead guy. What's his name? Emilio.
Emilio, yeah.
Okay, so he had to take care of the body, and he did it. Albeit didn't really work out the way they planned. But Jesse's like, you need to deal with this now. This is your end of the bargain. Well, Walt is pretty much, right in the beginning of the show, nearly ready to just throw it all away, let this guy go, let bygones be bygones. But then something compels him to look in the trash, right? Where he dumps the pieces of that non-paper plate. And he starts piecing them together and realizes that there's a shard missing from it. And then it's almost like he puts the pieces all together. When I let this guy go, he's going to stab me. He's going to kill me. All this stuff that we've been talking about, it's just so he can gain my trust, so I can let him go and he can get away. And after everything that he's told him, that who knows what this guy's going to do, right?
I mean, yeah, you're not sure.
So when Walt goes back down there, he's kind of still playing like he's going to unlock him, and he's hesitating because he's not going to unlock him. And he ends up choking him with the bike block because he's tied up to one of those steel poles they have in the basement for support.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But the most significant thing for this, and this is why I chose this episode, this is Walt's first kill, essentially.
I mean,
it is his first murder. The other one, when Emilio died, he did that as a means to escape, and he ended up. I mean, he said, he probably knew they were going to die, but this is his first deliberate. I have to choke him. I have to kill him, and it's different than it has a little bit different of an impact than the first one because he is pulling on this thing, choking the life out of a human being, and he does actually get stabbed in the leg, and he's trying to put more pressure, and Walt breaks down right after it. And it's so interesting to see this Walt in the beginning of the show, and then to see him later, and how just casual he is about killing later on. To me, this episode really starts that.
no,
It starts like you see it's almost like, what do they say? I'm trying to think of the word. The first kill is always the hardest, right?
Mm-hmm.
The more you do it, the easier it gets. And that is so true with him.
Yeah, this was the first time you really see Walter. I mean, this is essentially where I feel he broke bad. Because he realizes that it's his life versus Crazy Eight's life. And obviously there's only one option. Walt has to live. So he does what's necessary. And one thing I find so crazy about him killing Crazy Eight is a revelation we find out much later that Crazy Eight's actually an informant for the DEA.
Yeah.
That Walt snuffs out. And so maybe some of what Crazy Eight's saying in the basement when they're drinking those beers, talking about the where Crazy Eight's parents run the furniture store, right?
Yeah.
And he thinks maybe he bought the bassinet there, and they're not really sure. That that moment of sincerity where he's, Walter, you don't have to do this. You could just let me go. We'll forget all about it. That might have been the most honest moment of Crazy Eight. Him saying, "Let me live. Like, what good is greasing me gonna do? I'm nothing."
Yeah. I guess you could definitely say that. I mean, it definitely comes across that way. But to switch gears, there's another part of this episode that I really like, and it's kind of a side story for this episode. Obviously, Skyler starts getting hints early on that something's going wrong with Walt. He's acting weird, and Jesse calls the house in the previous episode, or it could have been 2 episodes prior to this. He calls the house, and she wants to know who he is, and she looks it up, and he's this drug dealer. So Walt tells this lie that Jesse is his drug dealing, and he's been smoking pot. Well, and then through a conversation with Marie thinks it's Walter Jr. that's smoking pot, and then takes Hank to go do this little scare tactic on him. Take him out.
I forgot all about that in this episode. Yes.
And it's just so funny because it's like, Walter Jr., he's a teenager, right? He's going to do your teenager stuff. But it's so funny to see him, like, he calls that one, like that one woman, she's like a hooker or something over. And just their interaction with her was really good.
She's like, gross, I'm not going to do the kid.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh my God, you didn't even have to say that. That's not what he was implying. He's trying to set an example, and she didn't see that. And it's so funny because, like, Walt Jr. is very much in the crosshairs right then. It's a misinterpretation. Marie thinks that Skyler is covering for Walt Jr., so she says it's Walt Sr., when really it's Walt Sr., and it has nothing to do with weed. I mean, granted, and that's I think that's the same scene. Is that in the same episode where Walt smokes weed before he goes to try to kill Crazy 8?
I do believe he does light up some of
because Jesse walks in, he's like, yo, what are you doing?
Yeah.
It's just
are you smoking my weed? And it's so funny because he also, doesn't he, like, they did this like little scene where he's like struggling to roll it.
Yes, I loved that. He's can't figure it out, and he's like, he's so angry because he just wants to smoke. Then he has to go over to the stove because he can't find a lighter.
Yeah.
Old white guy problems,
Right.
You can't do any of these things. No, I totally agree. That is a really great episode, man.
Oh yeah, dude. When I was kind of cycling through, I mean, when I was thinking about that first season, I'm thinking about what this show is about. The whole scene when Crazy 8 and Amelia are at their RV, that's one thing, right? But this was psychologically something entirely different. And it just stuck with me. I mean, it's very powerful, especially for Walt's transformation and going down his path of destruction.
Yeah, ultimately. I mean, like I said, this was his first real break bad moment. Yeah, making meth or whatever, that's kind of an offense, but to take another person's life, it was very, it just showed how dark Walter was willing to go.
And it kills a part of him inside when he does it.
Oh, absolutely. And weird thing, I think we all talked about this, and I can't really remember. There's a thing on somewhere online where it's like the 36 facts about Breaking Bad you never knew.
Yeah.
And one of the facts I thought was so interesting is that Walt takes a part of the people he's killed. So
yes.
To start, Crazy 8 doesn't like crust on his sandwiches.
Yes.
So by the time we get to season 3 and we're seeing Walt make his sandwiches, he's cutting the crust off of his sandwiches. That's a very prominent piece of Crazy 8 he took with him.
Yep. Yeah. Oh yeah. I definitely did. I did enjoy that theory about how psychologically, he does take something like a habit of theirs or something small that just kind of becomes a part of his psyche.
Yeah. Well, so my episode, we'll move right along here. I decided after kind of filtering through, watching a lot of different episodes, determining what I really thought was some of my favorite moments, what stuck with me the most. And obviously one of the most poignant scenes in the first season of Breaking Bad is the moment where Walter confronts Tuco for the first time. And for that reason, I chose my favorite episode from season 1 was A Crazy Handful of Nothing. I really love how the episode starts off. It's you're immersed instantaneously into this chaos where you're not sure what's going on. There's been an explosion. Walt's walking away with something. You're not sure why. It's the first time you actually see Walter bald, even before he shaves his head and Skyler sees him bald.
Yeah.
So, and that's just the intro of the show, you know, that's just the intro to the episode, and you're like, holy shit, like, how much further can they go? Then they take it all the way back, and, you know, you're building to this moment. Jesse's trying to sling his teenths of meth, and he's not making a lot of money, and obviously Walter says it's not acceptable, and I love the line Walter says, grow some fucking balls, you know? Just get out there and do it, and it kind of pushes Jesse to go, okay, well, how do I get this hookup with this guy Tuco? You know, because Tuco took over Crazy 8's role.
Yeah.
So you get to this point where Jesse is like, okay, well, I've got this guy Skinny Pete, and he used to be locked up with Tuco, so they go way back, and you think it's all cool. Jesse and Skinny Pete go, and they try to sell this meth for 35 large to Tuco, who, you know, agrees on the deal after snorting it and yelling booyah, which, another fucking hilarious, you know, famous line, you know. He just snorts that line and he just holds on, and all of a sudden he's booyah, you know. But you think everything's cool, and then he says, okay, get out of here. And Jesse speaks up and he goes, what about my money? And he's like, you'll get it. And Jesse's like, well, I'm not going to let you float me $35K. Like, that's pretty stupid of me. And, of course, there's that whole back and forth, which eventually ends up leading to Jesse getting the shit kicked out of him, which lands him in the hospital. And another reason I love this episode so much is because, really, this episode was the birth of Heisenberg. Heisenberg had to be created in this episode because it was the point where Walter realizes he's got to interact with certain people, and he can't just go, hi, my name's, you know, Walter Hartwell White, you know, nice to meet you. He had to come up with a pseudonym, so he came up with Heisenberg. So he tells Skinny Pete, you know, yeah, I'm the guy. And Walt decides he's got a plan. And interesting, they tie the school and what Walter's teaching the kids into how he's going to solve his problem with Tuco. So he's talking about fulminated mercury and these explosions and how, you know, an extreme change causes a strong burst. And you know, you're just like, oh, he's teaching these kids whatever, and you're slowly realizing that's how he's going to solve his problem with Tuco. At some point, Hank shows up at the school, and this is where things start to kind of get interesting. Hank is really making his first attempt to say, maybe it's Walt, but he knows it's not Walt. You know, it's the first time that they're crossing paths in this very formulaic way where Walter acts so innocent, and he's, you know, oh, what? I don't know about my inventory, and I'm one of the only people that has the keys to the back part of the lab. And you know, Hank goes through and is checking all this stuff off, and he's going, you know, there's a lot of stuff missing, man. Some meth head had a field day in your supply lab, and ultimately we get back to Tuco, and Walt goes up to the door, and he's shaved head. Oh, key moment that happens before that, because I'm kind of scatterbrained. Obviously, the first time we see Walter bald, and we see Anna Gunn as Skylar react to that. One thing I found out by watching some of the commentary on this was that they didn't let her see him until that scene was shot. So she didn't know what Bryan Cranston looked like without hair until that moment. So that reaction you're getting out of her is her purest, most basic human reaction of, holy shit, like, he looks so different, you know? And I thought that was really awesome. I thought that was really cool how they did that, you know?
Oh, yeah, that's really cool.
And also, listening to that commentary, I found out, and you might know this, but I didn't at the time, apparently Jesse was going to die after the first episode?
I don't know if it was the first episode.
Or like by the end of the first season, maybe?
Yeah, by the end of the first season. As I mentioned before, there was a writer's strike. And so, pretty much, we got a half season. Because they didn't have enough time to finish the rest of it. The original plot was going to be Jesse was going to die because of Walt. Right?
Yeah.
But then they cut the season short, and they kept going into season 2, and that's when Vince Gilligan changed his mind, because he really liked, you know, Aaron Paul's, you know, he liked his interpretation of the character. He liked the job that he was doing and bringing his character to life. So he decided to just completely change his mind on that and let it keep going.
Yeah, which was great, and obviously it served as I found it funny that, you know, when we'll work our way to that, but when it started, Jesse was on the chopping block to die after the first season, and ultimately he's the one that lives the most at the end of the series.
Yes.
You know, he is the one that survives the worst most horrific tragedies. He's the one that ultimately Walter White's character is tragic, but really the Jesse Pinkman character just gets drugged through the mud in such a way that it's almost indescribable,
Definitely.
So I loved in this episode, in closing here, there was a couple things. So we get back to obviously the Tuco moment, and Walt says, "I'm not leaving until I meet Tuco. You're going to give me $50,000. And Tuco's like, okay, you're fucking crazy. No. How do you figure? And he says, okay, I want $35K for the pound of meth you stole from me, and then I want $15K for my partner's pain and suffering. And then Tuco kind of realizes, wait, you brought more meth in here? What are you doing? And then that's the moment that we realize he actually brought fulminated mercury. He explodes it, walks out, and he has his big, violent fuck yeah moment in the car, which was really great, because that's the first time you see Walt, like, he's proud of himself. He had a plan, and he stuck to his plan, and it worked. It worked exactly how he hoped it worked. Jesse didn't fuck it up. No one interfered. He got what he wanted, and ultimately, he won.
Yeah, it was just, this episode is very important as well, because it shows him taking charge.
Exactly.
It shows him, we get our first glimpse at him, possibly in a way, like, okay, he says he wants to do this for his family in the beginning to make some money, but this is the high that he gets off of this, in a way, I think sort of starts to curtail that.
Yeah, because it's the most alive he's felt in a long, long time. And I'm talking even before he knew he was diagnosed with cancer. This is the first time Walter White is living,
Yes. Oh, yes.
And he's without fear.
Well, yeah, and part of that is that he feels like with the cancer he has nothing else to lose anyway. And it's interesting because in his approach on this, by taking charge, walking right in there to Tuco, right? Going face to face with him, with Tuco's cronies all around him, that takes balls that maybe Walter, before his little foray into this world, maybe would not have had.
Yeah, exactly. And one final thing that I forgot to mention, the biggest part of this episode that I really loved, and I wrote this in my notes, was the symbolism of the poker game with the White family and Hank and Marie, and Walter has got a handful of nothing. I mean, the title of the episode says it there himself, and it's really kind of a precursor and foreshadowing how the whole entire series is going to play out, where Walt is bluffing the entire time, and he knows what he's doing, but Hank would never suspect it to be Walter White, not at all. So it's this whole, he's not saying anything, he's being really stern. He's bluffing out Hank, and Hank's like, I'm not going to risk it, and throws in an ace and a king. And then he's got a 7 and a 2 of spades, handful of nothing, And it's so symbolic overall in the entire series that moment really sets the tone for that future relationship with Walter and Hank and where they end up going, ultimately.
Oh, yeah. I'm glad you brought that scene, because I completely forgot about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's so, and I mean, and in part of that scene, I mean, if I do remember correctly, I think, is it Jesse is calling him, and then he's on the phone with Jesse, and Skyler goes, Hank's about to deal, so he has to hurry up and get off the phone, real quick.
Mm-hmm. That's something that I feel the show does so much, is foreshadowing. It is so good.
Well, yeah, and they leave the candy trail in such a nice way, So, Brandon, what about season 2, man? Where did you come up with, what was your episode that made it for you in season 2?
Season 2, going along with Walt's transformation and his decisions, I chose Phoenix.
Ooh, great episode.
And basically, in this episode, Walt is worried about Jesse's descent into heroin addiction and won't give him his cut of the money until he's clean, right? Of course, Jesse's been hanging out with Jane, who's had a very messy addiction with heroin for about 10 years? Is that kind of what they say?
Yeah, she's been sober for 10 years, she said? She has her 10-year chip or whatever. Yeah.
But in a way, I kind of feel like she has a 10-year chip, but I'm not sure if she hasn't slipped,
Yeah.
Because it definitely kind of seems like, having your 10-year chip of sobriety would be like, oh wow, this is so empowering. But yet, the way that they portray her character is someone who's so easily able to fall back. And I'm not saying that people, aren't like that, but I definitely get the feeling that she's had her struggles with her father, who's really been trying to get her clean. Anyway, so she's hanging around Jesse, and she's ultimately having a bad influence on Jesse, as well as her. And Walt does not want to give Jesse the money because he doesn't want to basically play a part in this. He does not want to, give Jesse the ability to be able to just get whatever he wants, pump whatever he wants into his system, and potentially kill himself and put harm to himself. It's interesting because this is in this episode, Walt refers to Jesse as a family member, like a nephew. Is that what he says when he's at the bar?
Yeah.
Calls him a nephew.
Yeah.
And I feel like Walt is starting to feel that way about Jesse. Jesse's a friend. He's a former student. Obviously, they're business partners. But he really cares about Jesse. And this is the episode that it shines out that how much he really cares about Jesse as a person. He wants him to be a better person.
Yeah, he's trying to help Jesse to, as you said, become a better person, but ultimately evolve into the person that he could be,
Yes.
And not just be an addict, I guess is the best way to say that.
Yeah, not to be a slave to it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, So, what ends up happening is that Jane makes she sticks up for Jesse and makes Walt an ultimatum, and essentially Walt drops the money off, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a while since I've seen this episode. And then Walt goes and has the drink at the bar with Jane's father. They don't know each other, and they don't even know that they're talking about the same situation with the same people.
Yeah.
And I absolutely loved that conversation between the two of them. And before I move forward, there's something else that happens in this episode that I wanted to touch on. Walt misses the birth of his daughter.
Yep.
Now, Walt has been missing. He's been not missing. I've been long. It's not like he's been gone for 3 years, but there's been a lot of problems with him. A lot of issues that really haven't had good explanations. He's been away for a long, hours at a time. He's lying so much, and it's what I felt was really interesting is that when he finally shows up, she doesn't ask where he's been.
Nope.
She just that she said she wishes that he was there, and he gets to hold his daughter for the first time. But also, I kind of feel like this is one of the last straws for Skylar, even though she's not bringing it up now.
Nope, but she will.
She's pissed, and whatever he's going through, whatever it is, she's not very happy. But to get back to the thing with Jane, after he has the drink with her father, something prompts him to go back to their house, and that's when he finds them passed out, and she starts choking on her own vomit. She's just throwing up, and because he ends up moving him trying to shake Jesse Wick, and she rolls over, right? Because they were on her side, and she starts vomiting and choking.
Yep.
And what's awesome about this is that his reaction was like, "Oh no, I gotta help her," and right before he does, he goes, "Wait, maybe this is a good thing. Maybe this is better for Jesse. Because without her in the picture, she won't have the influence on him."
Yeah, and it's so crazy because the moment you're speaking of, Jane's death, plays such a gigantic role in the overarching story. Because this is Jesse's descent even further.
Yes.
And you see that this one girl, who had been sober for 10 years, who dies, and her dad sees her, dead corpse, he goes insane over it ultimately, and causes a tragic accident that you get teased from the first second you start season 2.
Oh yeah. See, and what's Walt's decision here? It has that domino effect, right? As that you mentioned, his decision not to save her ends up costing so many people their lives. And but for the overall part of the show, it is another big step in his transformation, because Walter White would have helped her, but not Heisenberg. Heisenberg's business, you know, and his decision. I mean, and what's awesome about this is that same with the episode I talked about before, where he's crying after he killed Crazy 8. There's tears in his eyes watching Jane die. You know, this is just, it's very powerful, because it's not like, oh, he just walks away. He sits there and watches her breathe her last breath, almost and essentially snuffing her out, making sure that she's not going to breathe again.
Yeah, and that moment of Jane's death, you know, as you continue to watch through the series, you kind of forget about it a little bit. And then later, which we'll talk about, it comes back in such a huge, fucked up, evil way that you can't even explain the level of Walter's demise, ultimately.
In the aftermath of this, if I want to remember correctly, because, you know, unfortunately, I didn't watch the entire series before we did this, back over again. The aftermath of this is what introduces Mike to the series, isn't it?
I do believe so, yeah. I can't quite remember why, but we start...
I want to say Walt gets a hold of Saul, because they're trying to protect Jesse.
That's right, and Mike goes in to do cleanup before the authorities arrive.
Yeah,
that's right.
And he's schooling Jesse on what to say, everything like that. So, I mean, it's very interesting, because, I mean, Mike is one of my favorite characters in the entire show.
Yeah, he's amazing. Actually, I watched a movie with Mike in it last night.
Oh, really? What one?
Horrible Bosses 2.
Oh.
He kind of plays a cop role again, and it's really, really good. He's really good. What is his name? Jonathan Banks, right? Mm-hmm. Plays Mike. Yeah, he's great. Great actor, and it was good to see him, you know, in something that was not Mike, but close, you know?
Right, yeah. I mean, I really enjoyed his portrayal of Mike throughout the series. But I really love this episode. I feel like this episode, as you said, there's such a chain reaction from Walt's decision. Not just immediate with the plane crash or all the lives that were lost, but overall with Jesse and pretty much to the end of the series, with Walt's decision with having that big overarching effect. And that's why I chose this one.
Yeah, I that's definitely, that was in my top 3 from this season. Like, I almost picked Phoenix, and it was like, well, maybe, I don't know. And then I kept going back to, there's a very prominent episode that we're going to get into here in a second that was my pick, that just kept drawing me back for various little tiny minutia of reasons. Yeah. Bringing the Baller Minutia saga back into our Breaking Bad retrospective. So for me, I thought about it, and I think this is 1 or 2 episodes before Phoenix, maybe 3, because I think Phoenix is the second to last episode of that season. So this is episode 9 from season 2. I picked 4 Days Out, and to really quickly summarize 4 Days Out, this is the episode where Walt is getting his PET CT scans. He sees the tumor-looking thing on the scan and assumes that means that his tumor is growing and that he's imminent and he's going to die soon. So he finally realizes, it's time to kick this shit in gear. Let's go cook for 4 days straight. And they go into the desert, him and Jesse. He stops Jesse, he calls Jesse and says, look, you cancel your plans, cancel whatever you're doing. Jesse and Jane are going to go to Georgia O'Keeffe Museum. Her flowers look like vaginas, apparently. So that's, that's Jesse's big selling point to Walter, and Walter doesn't give a fuck. He's just like, shut up, go get supplies. So they agree, and I thought, okay, so they're going to go do this cook. Walter, how are you going to tell Skyler that you're going away miraculously for 4 days? And of course he comes up with a brilliant lie and says, I'm going to go tell Mom I have cancer, and confront her and ultimately tell her what we're facing, because I don't talk to her. And you never meet Walter's mom, and she's really she plays such a minor role, but really kind of a big role as well in the story. So they go out into the middle of nowhere. and they're cooking, and they're trying to use up this methylamine. And Walt does some number crunching and figures out they're going to make $697,000 a piece. And that's after distribution fees and all that stuff, he says. So that's a huge number, and him and Jesse are just freaking out and dancing, and they're all excited. And Walt says, well, we're not done cooking. We're going to keep cooking until this is done. We're going to spend our we're going to get this done. And Jesse goes, dude, why don't we just go to a hotel, get a hot shower, have a bed, watch some TV, eat a pizza. He's giving him all these, these are great things we could just go and enjoy. And Walt's like, okay, fine. Yeah, let's do it. The Winnebago does not start because Jesse's an idiot and left the keys in the ignition. And then they have to kind of solve that problem. And again, it's going back to science. And how do you charge a battery? They try to use the generator. It fucking catches fire. What Jesse does, instead of using his brain, he pours the last of their water on it. It's just this is a poor Jesse episode. God, Jesse, can you fuck up anymore, And I do think that one thing that was really great about this episode, people don't realize, 4 days out, episode 9 of season 2, is the first time that Jesse finds out, I'm pretty sure, that Walter has cancer. Because of the chemo and everything he's been going under. I'm pretty sure. And that might have been the other episode. I don't remember. Whatever. It doesn't matter. So, they find out how to get out of this mess. They tried to call Skinny Pete and have him do it. And, of course, it's Skinny Pete. You're going to tell him stuff, and he's not going to do exactly what you tell him. So he tries to go, and he says, I just crossed the river. And Walt goes, wait, what river? And he's like, you're nowhere near us. You went the fucking complete opposite direction of us, and we're just screwed. We've got to figure this out on our own. Ultimately, they find change and different screws and stuff, and they make their own chargeable battery, get up, and they get out. And one line from this that stuck with me, and I'm going to go back and I'll talk about this in season 4 as well. Jesse picks Walter up at the airport in the crystal ship, as they call it. In their rolling meth lab. And Walt goes, you brought the RV, the meth lab, to an airport? And it's so funny, and we'll kind of discuss this later in my season 4 pick. Walt brings a bomb to a hospital, and Jesse goes, you brought a bomb in a hospital? It's almost like how dare you? You got on my ass for an RV outside of an airport, This is much, much worse. So overall, I felt that this episode was just, it was really building, impending. Walt's going to find out the results. He knows he's dead. He's sure he's dead. We get to the results. Hank, Marie, Skyler, Walt Jr. all sitting there, and he's in remission. His tumor has decreased in size by 80%. And it's just, everybody is overjoyed, overcome with happiness, except for one person, Walter White. And that's the moment where he goes, that was my end. That was me getting out of this and being done. I provided for my family. I was just going to die, and then everything was going to be taken care of. Saul would have told the family after the fact what Walt had to do to get that money. They would not have been an accessory to the crime, and no one would have ever found out. Walter would have just died, and it would have been fine. But instead, writers throw a wrench in the game, and they say, hey, he's getting better. He's going to make it. And my favorite scene, this is the scene that ultimately made me go, I have to put this as my favorite episode, is Walter walks to the restroom after he finds out that his cancer has shrunk in size. And he punches the fuck out of that towel dispenser in anger because he just wants to die. At that point, he's done everything he needed to do. He's experienced some of the worst things at that moment. He doesn't want to experience anymore, but he has to. And he realizes that, and he's faced with this new problem of, my plan was to go out, and we just did this 4-day cook. I'm not dead yet. Fuck, gotta keep going, So it's this new take on Walter, and what is he going to do now? How does he overcome this? And again, this all ties back into his decisions he makes later in season 2 with Jane, with everything. One thing I thought was really cool about season 2, Brando, is as we were talking about those facts, in season 2 there were 4 episodes that had really strange titles. The first
Yes.
episode was 747. There was one episode called Down.
Mm-hmm.
There was one episode titled Over. And then the final episode of the season was ABQ, which is the airport initials for Albuquerque.
Yeah.
So put those 4 together, 747 down over ABQ, which is ultimately what we see happen, and that's what we're getting all these flashbacks in the intros of the second season, with the teddy bear in the pool floating, the body bags all over. It really made for really, really great season of television, that's for sure.
Oh yeah. The only thing that really bugged me about all those scenes with the teddy bear, is the fact that when we would watch it, sometimes we would take a little bit of a break. So we would start and go, wait a minute, have we seen this? So we would stop and go, okay, yeah, okay, we're on the right episode. And then we would restart it.
Very nice, very nice.
But,
Man, so we're trucking right along here. Brando,
yeah.
I'm going to let you tell people what your season 3 favorite episode was.
Oh, let me guess. You can't hold it anymore.
Man, you're very smart. You know me too well.
You know what's funny?
Huh.
Is that I've got to go too, but I'm holding it.
Oh. This is an interesting dichotomy. Okay, so...
Okay, so what's gonna happen here? I mean, are you gonna go and then I talk and then I go and then you talk, or are we gonna take a short little bit of a break here?
Well, you know what? Why don't we just pause this recording and we'll come back to it? We can take a little breather, get ourselves put together, and then just go from season 3, folks. This is our Journey into Comics retrospective, and we will be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, while Nate and Brando are on their short bathroom break, I want to remind everybody you can check us out on Facebook at Journey into Comics Podcast. Check us out on Instagram at Journey into Comics, on Twitter at JIC Podcast, and if you don't know where to listen to us, check us out at journeyintocomics.podbean.com. Enjoy the rest of the show. Ladies and gentlemen, Nate and Brando here. We are back. We are pissed. Well, I mean, we pissed. We're not pissed. We're in a great mood, actually. Brandon, to continue on with what we're doing here on our Breaking Bad retrospective, what episode set the tone and made your favorite favorite episode from season 3?
Okay, well, first off, with this is that I've talked to people about this episode, and some like it and some don't, because the plot really stops. It doesn't really go. It doesn't take any steps forward with this episode. My episode is called Fly, and I don't remember what number it is.
Episode 10 of season 3.
10? Yeah, okay. But I love how this episode is shot. This episode is primarily just in their super lab that they got set up for him from our friend Gus. And Walt, he is exhausted from all his lies he's been telling. He's got to keep it all straight in his head. And he just becomes obsessed with killing this fly that comes into the lab, into his clean zone. And this episode is a little bit lighter in tone than the rest of the other episodes in the series, because it is really funny to watch how far and to what lengths Walt is willing to go to take care of his damn fly.
Well, it's contamination, brother.
It is contamination. But I mean, when you think about it, a normal person would give up after a while and go, I'll get him later. No. Walt stops what he's doing and focuses entirely on killing this fly. I love all the little things that they did, since this episode is mostly in this one room. They do a lot of different cool shots. And they do this shot, I believe they do this shot with the camera where it's like you're supposed to be like the eye of the fly. Yeah, I love how it's shot. I mean, the whole series is shot beautifully. They do a damn good job of shooting this series. But to go on, what I really like about this is that it gives Jesse and Walt time to really talk, just have dialogue between the two of them, and it goes so far to where Walt is like, he's delirious. He's so tired because he hasn't really slept. He's that obsessed. He's so tired from lying. He's tired from his head working overtime, keeping stuff straight, and he's also tired from lack of sleep. And there's a tease of Walt telling Jesse about letting Jane die. Like, for a moment, you think for a second, oh, he's going to tell him. He's going to tell him. And then he doesn't. But this episode adds tension. It doesn't really do anything with the plot. But I absolutely love this episode. And there are people I know that dislike it because of its break in the plot. It doesn't really do much.
Well, it was the only episode of the series that you can take out. You could take Fly 100% out, and it doesn't add anything. Mm-hmm. You know, and I think that's why some people, which I've luckily not met any persons that don't like Fly, and I think it's a great episode. As I was telling you before we came back from our short bathroom break, we're currently watching Fly on the TV, and I'm not gonna lie, I was laughing. Hopefully, it's not audible. Because Jesse Pinkman, one of the best lines that I forgot about is when he's talking about the Water Boys, and he goes, "Yo, Gatorade me, bitch." You know, and it's so fucking Jesse Pinkman. You know, it's so him, and it's just that's when you said this episode is so much lighter. It was like right there in the first opening minutes. It shows a different tone.
You know, okay, so obviously we made a special intro for this episode, right? So we mentioned each month is going to have a special episode, and each episode is going to have a different intro to associate with it. And I think, how funny would it be to just have an intro full of the compilation of all of Jesse's bitches?
Oh, that would be amazing. Yeah, bitch, magnets, bitch. Yo, Gatorade me, bitch. Yeah, it'd be fucking awesome. The bitch episode, you know. So continue on. Sorry, you were still talking about Fly.
I pretty much finished what I had to say about Fly. Really,
see, and it's so strange. As I was telling you, this was an episode that I initially, everybody around me when I was working on this list, they thought that Fly was probably going to be the one that made it from season 3, because I always talk in such high regards to it, from the camera angles that they use, the different shots they use, some of the different dialogue between Walter and Jesse coming to a head, and it starts with Walter in the lab alone, and he wants to kill this fucking fly, and he's been working on it all night, and then Jesse gets there, and they have to fucking try to do it together, Mm-hmm. And I love it because it's this companionship and this teamship that they want this to be accomplished so that their cook can be clean. And it goes from beyond, that pesky fly, to it's an obsession. And that's why I loved it so much as well. So for you to say that was your favorite episode really, really makes me happy, because that just further validates how great of an episode it was, honestly. But for me, for some reason, I have a real deep seated love for really dark and brutal moments in this show. I picked the episode 1 Minute. Now, the episode starts off with Hector Salamanca and our young cousins, the Mexican cartel cousins, in the backyard, looks circa 1980. Salamanca's talking about the Chicken Man, so obviously he's referring to Gus there. You've got the cousins, they're playing. One of the cousins breaks the other cousin's toy. He says he wants him dead. Obviously, as a kid, you don't mean you want someone dead, but Salamanca goes, okay, well, you want your cousin dead, and I'll drown him right in front of you. And, obviously he doesn't drown the cousin, and we get into the episode. And the episode then kicks off with Jesse getting home, Hank showing up shortly thereafter. We had the confrontation where Hank was about to get into the RV and got a call that Marie was in the hospital, so he leaves. He realizes that it's a hoax, realizes that Jesse, for some reason, Jesse's the one that must have done it. So he goes and beats the ever-living shit out of Jesse Pinkman and just fucks his whole world up. Jesse, obviously ends up in the hospital. Hank now realizes kind of what he did. He's like, I totally fucked up and I need to take responsibility for this. So the whole time we know that at some point the cousins are coming to take out Hank because he's a DEA agent who's tied to Walter White. And you're kind of waiting on this moment. So we get a lot of these back and forwards. Hank gives up and just says, I'm going to tell it like it is and tell you exactly what I did and why I did it, and I'll accept the punishment. And I thought there was a really, really beautiful and kind of dark scene in this episode where Hank gets on the elevator with Marie, and he just looks normal, and then it cuts into the elevator, and he's weeping, and he's just so... His whole world has been brought down in front of him. His job, his life, his everything he's ever worked for is gone because of this little punk rat, Jesse Pinkman. And that's how he feels. And then I loved it because as soon as they get off the elevator, he's just calm and normal again, not crying, looks just straight-faced Hank, and they walk away. So then we get back to the part where, Jesse and Walter having dialogue in the hospital. Walter offers him, $1.5 million to come cook with him in the super lab. And Jesse says, it's not about the money. I don't want to work with you. My life has went to shit since I met you. And all these bad things have happened because of you, essentially. Which he doesn't realize how true that is, because he doesn't know that ultimately Walt watched Jane die. So we get this dialogue back and forth. Ultimately, Jesse decides, okay, I'll work with you. So that kind of ties that up. Then we get back to the Hank story. Hank is now going to go in, say his official whatevers, and whatever his punishment is whatever his punishment is. They say, okay, let's write this up. Pinkman's probably pressing charges. I'm going to have to take your badge. So the captain of the department takes Hank's badge and gun. Hank, maybe in an altruistic way, decides that he's going to do something nice for Marie, maybe to take his mind off of what just happened. He goes to the store and buys her flowers. He gets back in the Jeep, and as soon as he gets in the Jeep, he gets a phone call. And it's a strange voice, and to this day, I still don't know exactly whose voice that is, or who tips Hank off that the cousins are coming to kill him. But they say, 2 men are coming to kill you in 1 minute, hurry, essentially. And Hank doesn't listen. He is stupid and thinks that Gomez is playing a prank on him, calls him back and says, you think you're funny with your stupid shit game, but it's not going to work on me. And then as this is all happening, the music, and this is one of my favorite parts, the music and the tension is building to this incredibly tight strand that could break at any moment, and then you see the cousins, and here they come, and here's this moment of darkness. And the one cousin gets behind Hank, and Hank realizes it, and he's getting ready to shoot, so Hank throws it in reverse and pins dude between the two vehicles. And, at that point, you're fairly certain that he died. I mean, if my, spine got crushed in half by two vehicles, I think I'd be dead, but who knows? So then the other cousin is really, he's got the fix on Hank, and he's shooting Hank, and there's bullet holes all over the Jeep. Hank is trying to save himself, and he thinks he has a beat on the cousin, shoots the cousin in the chest a few times. I still think that was the worst decision he could have made. When you see that the first shot doesn't even phase Guy, when the first shot doesn't even affect the cousin, you realize he's got a bulletproof vest on, shoot this fucker in his head. End of story. For some reason, Hank was trying to do the right thing, I guess, and didn't try to kill him, which almost leads to the demise of Hank Schrader, but luckily it doesn't, as Hank is literally staring down the barrel of this gun. The cousin says, this is too easy. I'm going to do this a little bit darker and make you suffer. And he goes to get this axe, and he comes back, and the whole time in this beautiful scene, Hank, bloody-handed, is trying to get the bullet that the cousin dropped, that the dude that gave them their Kevlar bulletproof vests had gave them as a freebie. Here's the free bullet. It's on the house. It, expands and, can blow a hole in the mule or whatever the fuck that crazy guy said. I don't remember. But he gets the bullet, puts it in his gun, clicks it back, and right before he's getting ready to get his head presumably chopped off, he, boom, blows the head off the other cousin. Episode over. And just the craziness and the intensity of that episode really drove it home for me. And that's the sole reason I picked that as my episode from season 3. Absolutely.
That episode is very, very heavy with Hank and his character development. And ultimately, because of what happens here, it is because of it, it leads into his little seclusion thing and his obsession with rocks.
Yeah.
I mean,
Absolutely.
it really does. It almost essentially takes him out of the picture entirely, which could be a blessing to Walt. Really, with as awful as what has happened to him, it could almost be seen as like a sigh of relief from Walt's and know that Hank's a really good agent, and if there's ever going to be someone to figure it out, which is kind of funny because it takes Hank so long to figure Walt out,
Well,
but.
it was like right under his nose
Yeah.
the whole time.
I mean that whole part that you mentioned, that was a very intense scene to watch. That was a very intense scene to watch, and it was very well done. It was very well done, and of course, as you said, though, one of the cousins did actually survive that.
And ultimately, we find out in the next episode that the cousin does survive. He's just without his legs, which another great twist, obviously, in the story of Breaking Bad. One thing I will say is that with 1 minute, there was a moment where Skyler goes and visits Walt and says, "Look, this will destroy Hank if Pinkman presses charges. This will kill Hank effectively." And I found that so interesting because part of me goes, well, if Pinkman would have pressed charges on Hank, Hank would not be a DEA agent. He would not have been reinstated, ultimately not leading to his own death. Spoiler alert. If you're listening to this and I had to say spoiler alert, why the fuck are you listening to this?
Yeah.
Am I right?
This far into our little gush of Breaking Bad, if you're listening this far into it and you don't know what happens at the end, it's kind of a shame.
I mean, right? So, yeah.
No, dude, I definitely agree with. I mean, that episode was great.
For some reason, I have a real tie to the Hank Schrader character because you feel for him because he's he's the smartest guy, but he's super gullible and he'd never expect the person right under his nose to be the person he's looking for ever.
We don't. He's family. He turns a blind eye to it essentially because he loves Walt. He loves Walt. He loves Skyler. He loves Junior, and they are. And they make the point of this pretty much from the get go is that they're all a pretty tight knit group. They really are. It's like Hank and Marie, they are relatively close to Skyler and Walt.
I mean, there's a lot of family gatherings that happen throughout the series between these families.
I mean, and there's all your evidence. They are really close to the point where you could almost Hank Walt is Hank's brother essentially, right? How many times like for example when Walt moves out, Hank helps him.
Yeah, he does.
He's there for him. That's the kind of character that Hank is. Hank will take his shirt off his back for you, and he is the epitome of good in this show.
Now, what we heard in our intro, where what do you got in here? A ton of bricks.
Yeah,
is that when Walt's moving out?
I believe so.
And Walt just straight up says, "No, it's $500,000," which he's serious, but Hank doesn't know he's serious.
Right. Well, it's kind of funny because it's almost like Walt doesn't know what to say, so he just kind of tells the truth. And because he does it in like a very dark, like straight out tone. I've got $500,000 in there, and then Hank's like, "Yeah, I wish, right? Huh?
Yeah, being the classic Hank Schrader that we love.
And that's just his role. I mean, that's just who he is. He loves his family, and obviously, what happens at the end when he starts piecing that makes that scene later on with Hank piecing stuff together so powerful.
Oh, absolutely. All right, Brando, let's find it out. Our listeners want to know. We're at probably one of the most poignant seasons in this series now. Season 4, what's your episode?
Crawl Space.
Oh, yes.
Crawl Space picks up with the aftermath of Gus's little excursion down in Mexico. Of course, that leaves, Gus, like he poisoned himself, right?
Yeah.
If I do remember correctly, to poison his enemy. And so they're taking him to get help. Poor Mike has been shot, and they don't give a crap about Mike. Like, he's the help, essentially. But, so, after all that, Mike has to heal up. Gus ends up getting better before Mike. And on the way back, Gus and Jesse have this nice little talk where Jesse's trying to build him. You don't have to kill Walt. And Gus is like, there's no other way. Gus wants Jesse now to lead the lab by himself. He's been trying to get Jesse in to be in his inner circle because he knows he can kind of manipulate Jesse, right?
Yeah.
He knows that Jesse, Jesse is he's a talented kid, but he also falls in line. He's loyal, which is proven with how loyal he is to Walter after all the things that Walt's kind of put him through, not mentioning things that he doesn't know about, like Jane. But, Jesse sticks up for Walt there, and Gus doesn't see another way. But it goes to show you near the end of the episode, just how much respect Gus does have for Jesse in a way, by doing the way that he's going to do it, by giving Walter a chance. The thing is that Gus pretty much takes Walt out into the desert, and of course he's kind of doing a scare tactic, and Walt immediately pieces together and goes, if you wanted me dead, I'd be dead already. If you could kill me, I'm still useful to you. And Gus tells Walt that he's going to kill Hank. Hank's getting too close. And if Walt interferes, he's going to kill him, his wife, his son, and his infant daughter.
Which is pretty fucking dark of Gus, but it's no surprise.
Down. No, not at all. Gus is running a very tight little business here. And if there's any threat to it, he has to take it out. And Hank is that threat. Even though you said something about someone calling and warning Hank, I don't think that this was the person that did it. But if I remember correctly, Gus is the one who basically had somebody tip Hank off. If I remember correctly.
Yeah, because he's I do remember in that 1 minute, it was kind of the thing where the cousins were acting outside of what Gus wanted to have happen, and that was not respect, and Gus wanted to show his respect. He wanted people to respect him,
Yes. And now he's like, he has to take Hank out. Hank's getting too close. He's getting so close. The thing is that through Walt's connection with Saul Goodman has told him that there's a way out. It'll take a certain amount of money, but what we can do is pretty much set you up with a new identity, you and your family. We can get you out of Dodge, right? This is your get out of jail free card. And Walt wants to use it. Walt hurries home. He's looking for the money. He's getting stuff together. He goes, we got to go now. He doesn't want anything to happen to Hank, but he realizes that it's either him or his own family. And Walt freaks out, and he tries to find the money, and that's when he finds that the money's gone. Skyler gave the money to Ted.
And this scene is the scene that you're about to speak to when he gets in the crawl space. It's so interesting because that shot, the shot of Walt on the ground on his back, the camera panning up from close in up to the sky, kind of, is how the death of Walter White, the actual death of Walter White, happens. And some say that this moment is the kind of the death of Walter White anyways, because he's laughing. He starts off upset. He's freaking out that the money's gone from the crawl space, Well,
yeah, and I was going to say that this is the sort of psychological death of Walter White, because now he has no choice but to deal with matters himself, because he has to decide what he wants to do, and if he's going to face Gus, that means he has to be on Gus's level of ruthlessness.
Which we do find out that Walter White does have that in him.
He does.
The Gus Fring ruthlessness.
He absolutely does. And I think that there's a struggle within him that he can do it, and he doesn't necessarily want to do it, right? But at this point, he feels like he has no choice. He has to take care of things. He has to go that far. He has to go that deep. And that's not something that Walter White, the actual person Walter White at the beginning of the show, would have never have done. Again, I keep going back to that because there is a transformation here. He physically is still Walter White, but he changes so much over the course of the show and the course of the time period that he's no longer the same person. And I feel like this right here is the line in the sand. He's got to go past this point. He's got to deal with Gus, and how he decides to handle it is the ultimate eradication of Gus and to take over entirely. But to do that, he's got to manipulate Jesse. He's got to deal with Mike. Well, actually, Mike's out of the picture at this point. He's still in Mexico. But he's got to deal with all these things. He's got to make sure his family's safe while he does it, because obviously, and this leads, this whole, I want to say, I don't remember what episode it's in, if it's in this one or if it's the one right after, but it's the one that we used for the intro, the I Am the Danger.
Yes.
Was that a part of this episode, or was it after?
Oh man, I cannot remember where that happens in this series. It's season 4.
Yeah. Well, because what happens is that Skylar Jr. and the baby end up going to stay with Hank and Marie while they're being watched, right? Because obviously there's the threat on Hank's life, and they're trying to keep him safe. And Walt, I can't remember his excuse as to why he doesn't go. If there's something going on
with why he doesn't go with the DEA?
Was it because of the car wash?
Yeah, it's because of the car wash, because he's, because I remember Marie calls Walt and says, I don't care how many fucking air fresheners you sold today, get here,
Yeah. But really, that's just the cover for him doing what he's really doing. And we talked about bringing the bomb to the hospital. And that, that happens after this. But I absolutely love just the urgency with him, and how he almost wants to just run away with his family and be gone with it and be done with it and get away with his life, but then he can't, and then that breaks him mentally.
Oh,
because now he's in. There's no other reason, It's amazing. That scene that you said, this him in that crawl space laughing insanely almost is just it's a very, very awesome scene.
Very powering, yeah. Well, I'm sure people could probably figure this out. We have to talk about this episode. It was, I know when I first saw it, it literally shocked me. I was not expecting the ending of my episode from Season 4, and it was the ending of Season 4, the obviously Face Off. Face Off has a lot of powerful things that happen in it. We've got Walter realizing that he didn't blow up Gus Fring. He's screwed. He's brought the bomb into the hospital. Jesse is dealing with Brock and what he thinks is ricin poisoning. We find out later that it's not. We find out also later how dark Walt is willing to go to kind of manipulate Jesse. The FBI shows up, or not the FBI, the local Albuquerque police show up, and they want to talk about this ricin that Jesse said to Brock's mother. Why would you say such a thing? And Jesse's trying to cover his ass, and he just said, I just generally said poison, and because he's, and I love that the interviewer goes, yeah, because I'm sure the doctors really liked your help, like they really needed you to tell them it might be poison, because you're a pro at, being, having your PhD in, being a doctor. So, Walt and Jesse have to reconfigure what they're going to do. How are they going to do this? What's the plan? How do you kill Gus? There's cameras at his house. There's cameras at the laundry. There's cameras everywhere. Anywhere that Gus Fring goes, there are cameras. There's someone always watching him. There's no element of surprise. So Jesse tells Saul while he's in interrogation, Casa Tranquilla, which is the nursing home that's got Hector Tio Salamanca in it. And you are just ding ding. You're just not quite sure what the end game is here. So Walter goes and talks to Hector and says, I'm sure you want to see me dead, but I know someone who I'm sure you want to see dead more. And there's a plan, and you don't really know the plan, and you're not really keyed in on the plan at all. So Hector calls his assistant in and starts using his bell, and she's trying to ask him if he needs to go to the bathroom, and obviously he's no. So she gets out the chart, and she's doing the AEIOU, and he spells out need, DEA, and she's like, need dia? That's not a word. You need a deal? You need deer? What's the word? And obviously it comes to light that he needs the DEA. So he goes to the DEA. He's at the DEA for 3 hours. He doesn't want to talk to anybody but Hank Schrader, and he just keeps spelling out Hank Schrader. He wants to speak to Hank Schrader. So Hank comes and says, okay, we're going to have this big meeting. What are you going to tell us? What's the importance? They've got their tape recorders and everything, and he starts his dingy game again and spells suck my. And, they go, okay, now you got that out of your system, you want to try again. And he starts to spell fuck you. And obviously they only get to the C, and Hank's like, okay, we've had enough here, there's no need. So this tactic was he will never talk to the DEA. He would never, ever tell anybody anything that he's ever done because it's just he doesn't want to be a snitch, a rat, if you will. So what's the purpose? Well, someone's watching the DEA because they're trying to get Hank. So they see that Hector Salamanca has gone and spoke to the DEA. Obviously, he just ratted out Gus. That's the only logical thing it could be. So now this is where Walter's plan is coming into the fold. And Gus is going to go to Casa Tranquilla, and he's going to confront Hector Salamanca and most likely kill him. And one thing I loved is the scene where Tyrus goes in and makes sure that there's no audio recording devices, nothing DEA related. Walt is outside the window, and he's just standing quiet. And you hear this little old lady, hello, hi, hello. And she's waving at him all excited and happy, and he's just like, shut up, I'm trying to listen, And he escapes before anything happens, and obviously Gus shows up, and he calls Hector Salamanca a rata, and he says, you're a rata, and, you ratted to the DEA, and what kind of man would do that? No man. And he's getting ready to inject Hector, and Hector kind of gets this, like, I don't know what the word is, but the best thing I can come up with right now, and I'm not trying to offend anybody, I swear to God, he kind of has some sort of retard strength go through him, where he gets this grunt face and starts hitting the bell really, 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 really angrily, which is setting in motion the spark that's going to create this bomb to go off. So he does that, and obviously Gus shit, and boom, it explodes. And the most poignant part of this episode, which, stuck with me, it's the sole reason why I had to talk about how great it is. You see the door blow off its hinges, and out walks Gus Fring, and you're like, how does this motherfucker not die after that? He's so strong. How did he avoid death? He can't be dead. What's Walt gonna do now? And the scene is so brilliantly shot, and watching the commentary and the behind the scenes of how they shot this, it's two shots that they meshed together where they blow the door and they have that scene and they kept the camera, and then they ended up doing 19 takes with Giancarlo Esposito to get the take that was, Gus walks out of the room and he's adjusting his tie, and you're just like, this motherfucker is indestructible. And then it pans to his right side of his face and it's blown off. And then he just looks, and he falls to his knees. And that's it. Gus Fring is dead. We finally got what we were hoping for, an epic resolution. So the episode ends with Jesse telling Walter, hey, it wasn't ricin, it was this flower that's got berries called Lily of the Valley. Little kids like to eat them and poison themselves, which was ultimately Walter poisoned Brock to use him as a pawn to get Jesse against Gus, and on Walt's side to make Walt the one that survives this. Again, Walter saying it's your neck or it's mine, and ultimately it's your neck because I'm not going out yet.
Yeah, that to me, the fact that he was willing to poison a child to just be a pawn in the whole thing, that speaks volumes as to how far he's come and to where he's willing to go to make sure that he survives.
Which,
make sure that, yeah,
he definitely did. It's so funny because the importance of Brock being poisoned, in this season, I don't know if you remember, but it's Brock's, is it his older brother, or was it his sister's brother? Something, or it was his mom's brother, right? Who is ultimately the guy that shot. I can't think of his name. Starts with a C. The crew with Badger and Skinny Pete, the other dude.
Oh.
In season 1.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
I can't think of that guy's name, damn it. Anyways, he gets shot by Brock's uncle, I guess we'll call him, because I'm thinking that's the relationship. It's his mom's brother. So, at 9 years old, they realize that ultimately Gus is using kids. And Gus's crew are using kids. And Jesse, at one point in season 4, goes, no. Like, you're not going to do this. You can't let them get away with using children, So to see Walter go, oh, well, we said no more children, but I can turn this and make Jesse my bitch, which is ultimately what he did.
Yep.
Is really the darkest place at this point in the show Walter White could go. As I sit here and watch what we're about to discuss on screen, it's so dark. So, interestingly enough, folks, when me and Brandon made our lists, we were completely independent of each other. We did not talk at all about what we were going to do, and until today, and usually up and until Brandon announces it, I didn't know what his picks were. But strangely enough, as fate may have it with the amazing series that is Breaking Bad, the final season, we both agreed on one thing. Brandon, what's our favorite episode?
That would be the fall, if you will, of Walter White, and I believe it's pronounced Ozymandias.
Yeah, Ozymandias.
Ozymandias. And of course, this is the episode where Walt finally reached what he's been selling the entire series.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, one thing I would say is you could call this episode the death of the White family.
Yes. Yes. I mean, this is the moment this is the collapse. This is the moment that you've been thinking that you've been like dreading that could happen ever since the start of the series, and it happens. The episode before this, they tricked Walt. And when I mean they mean Hank and Jesse tricked Walt into saying that they found Walt's money that he buried, and made it look like they were burning it to lure him out. And what they were doing is that they were really tracking him to where the money really was.
Out in the middle of nowhere, wherever these coordinates that he decided to go and bury the money at.
And actually, where he buried it was the site of the first cook.
Yeah, which is obviously very symbolic for Walter. It's where he starts his Breaking Bad.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the whole purpose of the series. One thing I loved about Ozymandias is the dark characterization of Jack and his gang.
Yes.
And how dark they got, and how they just killed 2 DEA agents like it was nothing.
Yes. And see, the thing is that what I love about this is that the previous episode ended with a firefight with Hank Gomez going up against Jack and his crew. Walt called Jack for help. And then finally, at the end of the previous episode before this, Walt gives himself up to Hank. It's all over. But then Jack and his crew show up and they start a firefight. And Walt is still handcuffed. He is still handcuffed. And Hank has been shot. He's injured. He's not dead yet. Gomez is already dead. And Walt is pleading for Hank's life. He's trying to convince Jack not to kill Hank. This is funny. They have this whole sort of situation. Here's this DEA agent, my brother-in-law. He won't tell nobody. Please, let him live. And of course, I mean, that's ridiculous when you think about it.
Oh, absolutely.
But, and of course Jack's like, whatever. And then when it's not getting through, Walt's like, I have $80 million. You can have all of it if he lives. Just think about that. Everything that Walt's been doing, all these terrible things. This is his last moment of goodness in him almost. Well, before the actual end of the series. But this is like Walter White trying to save it. He's trying to save Hank. Even though after everything, he does not want Hank to die. Not at all.
No.
He's willing to give up everything he's worked for, everything that's happened, to save Hank. And that's that leads into one of Hank's best lines of the entire series.
Yeah, which we heard in the intro again.
Yeah.
Great intro, by the way, Brando. I don't know if people know this. I don't think we've said it yet, but Brandon made that intro in a half hour on the spot, hour?
I think it was about an hour.
See, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Your editing skills are just whatever, do, I got it. Perfect.
Hey, dude, okay. It was cool. It was, I did some work on it, and I had to make sure the levels were hopefully not too overpowering with some of the scenes. I had to raise some levels, but whatever. It wasn't that hard to do once I figured it out. And it was, but for this, it's that line. It's this, you're the smartest person I've ever met, but you're too dumb to see that he made up his mind 10 minutes ago. And then he turns to Jack and says, do what you gotta do. And before he can even finish it, Jack shoots him. And as Walt crumbles.
I mean, and that's like you said, it's the last shred of goodness, and then the switch has officially flipped. Because who causes all this? Who created this problem for Walter White? Who was the cause of this problem? Jesse Pinkman. So what does he want now? He wants Jesse Pinkman dead. And I love the he says that to Jack, you haven't finished where, you still owe me Pinkman. He said, and Jack goes, let us know where we can find him. And, we'll take care of that for you. And, calm, bullface Walter White just goes, found him. And he's under the car, and it's just such a dark scene. And you're like, oh, this is the end for Jesse. He is done. He is dead. There's no chance for survival. And then almost a moment of fortitude. Todd steps forward and says, maybe we don't want to kill this guy. He did talk to the DEA. We don't know what he had even said. What if he didn't say anything about us? And what if we're just scot-free and we don't have to kill this kid? Or what if he's going to tell us everything we need to know to erase ourselves from their worries,
Another thing is that they were trying to improve the purity of the recipe, because Walt at this point is out of the game, and he retired himself. He said he's not doing it anymore. But them trying to recreate his recipe has not proved fruitful. It's not as good. And I think Todd realized, we're not getting Walt back. This is the next best thing.
All right, so like I said, I'm watching this episode as we're talking about it. One thing I just noticed, they have Todd on the screen, and it never hit me until right now. The bulletproof jacket that Todd is wearing it looks like the exact same bulletproof jackets that the cousins got in season 3 before they try to kill Hank.
Huh.
It's a white, basic Kevlar, and they look identical, so that's really interesting. But there's the moment. I was just getting ready to talk about it. The darkest moment of this show is what Walter says to Jesse before they're going to take Jesse away to, like you said, to improve the formula, to find out what the DEA knows. And he just calmly walks over to Jesse and goes, I watched Jane die. I was there the night she died. I watched her overdose and choke to death. And I did nothing, I could have, but I didn't, And it's just such great darkness from the Walter White character. He has finally taken everything from Jesse Pinkman, ultimately.
Yeah. To go further into this episode, too, though, it's, now shit it's hit the fan. Hank's dead. There's no way around that. Walt needs to leave. They need to get out. They need to get away, disappear. So now he's going to go through with what he was going to do at the end of season 4. Oh, also, wait, Jack took most of his money, too.
But he left one barrel to Walt.
Yeah, one barrel to Walt. He took the rest of it, which is what, about 11 million, 10 million, something like that. It was around that. So Walt gets that all the way back into town. He's going to be using that money, leaving, new identity, whole family. Of course, he's not giving any sort of real answers. Skyler's questioning him. What? No, we're not leaving. What's going on? What happened? And then, of course, you killed Hank. And I love the line from Walt. It was no. And then in tears, he's like, I tried to save him.
And then Walt Jr., what? You killed Uncle Hank?
Yeah. And it's such an emotional scene because this is the destruction of his family. He's losing it. And ultimately his decisions have cost him everything.
Yeah, I mean, and there's no coming back from that at that point.
The scene that breaks my heart the most is when he takes the baby and leaves, and Skylar's running down the street screaming after him.
Oh, and she breaks down in the middle of the road.
Yes.
She drops to her knees. It's such a dark, powerful scene.
I mean, because it is... He becomes such a monster, you know? And this is just like when people say, oh, I never expected something like that. Whoa. You know, it's almost like he's the nicest guy.
Yeah.
He's almost like the everyman. And throughout this entire show, this entire show has been leading up to this moment where he is no longer that same person. He is a monster. He's a shell. And this carries forward, though. Walt is always thinking. He's always trying to be steps ahead. And he knows that the police, FBI, whatever, they're going to be at the house. They're going to be talking to the family. Obviously, Hank is dead. And he calls. He calls on a cell phone and talks to Skylar and just says all this crazy shit.
Oh, yeah.
You didn't listen. He sounds furious. He sounds furious. You stupid bitch. You know? And what he's doing, though, it's so brilliant. She knew, right? She knew. And he knows that there's no real way, for the authorities to say, oh, come on, you had to have known. But if they know that she was in fear of what he would do if she told somebody, then that's going to implicate her less. And especially the rest, his junior and then the baby. He wants to take all the blame. And that's what this phone call does, essentially. It removes her from the eyesight. It tells the police this guy is a fucking maniac who is doing this. She found out, wanted to say something, obviously, but was so scared. What is this guy going to do to her if he says something? And the way that he says, and you tell my son what I do? And when he calls her a stupid bitch and then hangs up, breaks the phone, and he dies inside that he had to say that to her.
Yeah, I mean, it broke him. I think that's the last little bit of Walter White's humanity that's just finally been stripped away right there at the end when he says those things to her.
Well, I mean, think about it. How much would that kill you to say, I'm doing this ultimately to protect her, right?
And the family.
And the family. This is all going to come on me. But this is, I mean, obviously this isn't the last time, but in his mind, this could be the last time I ever talk to her. Yeah. And I have to say these things. And it breaks his heart. It really does. But he has to do it. There's no way that he can, with the goodness that's left in him, allow his family to take the fall for what he did.
Yeah, and ultimately, like you were saying, it's almost kind of like he's a martyr in that respect, because he says everything that he knows he needs to say to get her off the hook as much as he can. Obviously they're going to come at her a little bit.
Yes.
But ultimately, if he can make himself look like the only person, and he acted, and maybe he told her, but he acted alone, and he caused her to fear for her life. Those are the two most important things that keep authorities off of Skylar's back.
Exactly. And that's this whole episode's heartbreaking. And it's a roller coaster of an episode, because he has bouts of just utter destruction. Then you have the whole fight with Skylar and Junior, and the pace goes up a little bit and it goes back down. This is what makes this show so great. I mean, the whole show is great, but this episode just captures the feel of what this show was meant to do. And
I want to read this little quote real quick here from the IGN review of Ozymandias. It says, "I want to say Ozymandias is going down as the most gut-wrenching, twisted, horrific, well-planned episode of the season and maybe the series. But I'm afraid of the next 2 episodes." I mean, because we're still 2 episodes away from the finale at this point in the show, and for this to all be happening, the darkness of this episode, and we still haven't seen Walt's finest moment, ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely enjoyed the way that the entire series ended and wrapped up, but in order to get to that, we had to have the teardown of the White family, and also the extended White family as well, with Hank and Marie. Like, Hank had to pay for that because of Walt's decisions, and that's heartbreaking.
Yeah, he really did. Yeah. Oh man, that episode's such a downer, huh?
Oh, dude, it is. It is. And we'll see, because the series does sort of end with like a positive note. Walt gets out of town. He stays out of town for quite some time, and he comes back and he sort of atones a little bit by he pretty much meets with Skylar one last time, and that's of course when he admits that he did it for himself the whole time.
Because he was good at it.
I mean, of course, at first, he can lie to himself and say, "Oh, I've got to do this for my family. I've got to do this so we have money." But then, as he got into it, he fell in love with it, and that's part of one reason why I put that last bit in the intro. The last thing that you hear is, "I did it for myself," and because that's very. I feel like that's very indicative as to just he was so selfish. He was mad about losing. That prior success with Gray Matter and everything. This was his makeup for that. This is his own success. This is something that he can claim that he did all on his own. I mean, obviously with some help with Jesse, but it became his empire.
Yeah, ultimately.
And, yeah, but I also like how he went back and he made good with Jesse in a way. He got Jesse out of that. And
speaking of Jesse, we haven't really talked about him in this episode, but he is starting his year of slavery essentially with Jack's crew, and they're going to bring him into their not so super lab, and they're going to have him cook, and he's going to be tied to a chain, and it's going to be super fucked up how they do that, and ultimately we see it's interesting because the first episode of season 5, Live Free or Die, ultimately tells us what's going to happen in the finale, where Jesse lives free and Walt dies.
Yeah.
Well, presumably. We don't see a funeral. I still don't know that Walter White is dead.
I think he is.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think it has to be. He definitely has to be. I mean, of course, there was that theory that it was all just a dream. That it kind of. There was going to be I don't know if this was going to be, but I know I saw it on YouTube, or somebody edited in the camera panning up from Walt, and then him kind of going back to Mr. White. Did you understand what I told you? And Walt says, "Yes, lung cancer, inoperable." Like the whole thing was just a figment of his shock. And so what do I do? And of course, his brain is so crazy and whacked out that he thought of that whole scenario within seconds.
That's a really crazy theory. That'd be cool. I also liked, obviously, there was the funny theory that it was all a dream and he was in Malcolm in the Middle still.
Yes,
I thought that was great.
I absolutely just adored that. That was just so fun. And I liked how they did some jokes. And then the camera pans over to the chair sitting by the bed, and there's the hat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. I have a friend, and he's actually been on the show before, Matt, that I've been trying to get him to watch the show, but he cannot bring himself to do it because he loved Malcolm in the Middle growing up, and he cannot picture Bryan Cranston being this character. And it's such a shame. It is such a shame because I feel like Bryan Cranston shined in this show, and it's going to be because of this show that he can now do anything he wants.
Absolutely. Brandon, what I need you to do real quick is you're going to grab a pen and a piece of paper or get your phone out. You're going to text Matt. You're going to tell Matt that when this episode goes up at 1 minute or 1 hour and 35 minutes, or 1 hour, 34 minutes, wherever it ends up being, in this general time vicinity where we're at in the show, he's going to listen to these words that I'm about to say right now. Matt, listen to me, dude. You have to get past it. This show is phenomenal. It's one of the best shows you'll ever watch. Maybe it starts a little bit slow. Maybe the first couple episodes are a little bit of character building, whatever. I know Malcolm in the Middle is Malcolm in the Middle, but you're doing yourself a disservice by not watching Breaking Bad. It is hands down one of the best, if not the best, television program that's ever come out in the past ever, as far as I'm concerned. It's won Emmys and all kinds of different awards. I think Aaron Paul won an Academy Award for supporting actor. Cranston won for actor of the year. It won show of the year. I mean, there's so many reasons to watch this show. It's dark, it's evil, it's great, it's brilliant. It brings you to a new core of watching where you can't, it's like watching a car accident. You can't turn away. You want to not look because you feel bad, but you can't stop watching because of how crazy things get. And you think in season 1 when certain things happen, you go, okay, well, that's as crazy as this show can get. And then it gets crazier. And it's like every season they raise the bar to this new level of insanity. So, Matt, seriously, man, listen to this podcast after you've watched how awesome this show is, because I promise it will not disappoint you. How'd I do for selling that?
You know what? Nothing that you have already said is not anything that I've already said to him.
Damn it.
I know. I'm going to get him to watch it at some point because he wouldn't watch Walking Dead either, and then now he loves it. But
yeah, it's so weird.
I swear, if he can just get over the fact that Bryan Cranston's not acting goofy in every scene, and just see how good of an actor Cranston is. I mean, I kind of compared it to how good of an actor Robin Williams was. He was such a funny guy, and yet when he did a really great drama role, he knocked it out of the park.
Absolutely. Okay, Brandon, I've got a question from the entire series. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit.
Yep.
Who do you think's the evilest person that was in Breaking Bad? The
most evil person.
The most evil person.
Most evil person. You see, and that's an interesting question because even Walt, with as evil and bad as he got, he had a few redeeming qualities.
Yeah.
At the end. At the end, I mean, his mistakes and his decisions led to everything, but the most evil SOB. Even Gus has a few redeeming qualities.
Yeah.
He's a businessman.
Yeah, I agree. And he tried to be there for Hank after Hank got shot by the cousins.
Mm-hmm.
Brought the whole department food.
I mean, it's politics, but yes. Most evil. That's maybe it's. Dude, I got it. It's gray matter.
Oh, you think gray matter?
Dude, they're the most evil people because when they threw their party, they didn't tell the simple people that Tan was in because Walt and Skyler are the only ones that aren't wearing tan.
Yeah, and what is that line like? We must not have got the memo about the beige.
Beige, that's it. Beige, yeah. And then I don't know. The most evil because I almost wanted to say Hector.
Really, you think Hector Salamanca, huh?
He was mean.
Yeah, but I mean, he had a redeeming quality to him because he wanted to help. He could, if he was as evil as the evilest of evil, he would have told Walter White in dings to fuck himself. Ding, ding.
Think about it like this, though. There were no redeeming qualities with Hector that they showed, and the only reason why he went along with Walt is because he wanted Frank dead more.
Yeah, that's true.
Because Walt was offering him his ultimate revenge. I don't know. So I think Hector might have to be my pick.
Yeah. You know, I say this jokingly, but part of me thinks Marie is the most evil. And here's a few of the reasons why. Look at Marie. She's this kleptomaniac. She steals things. She gets Skylar into trouble. She acts like it's no big deal. She tries to act like she gives a shit about Hank's rocks. She doesn't fucking care about his minerals, you know. But the thing that I think put her over the top for me is how she just so cold-heartedly tells Skylar, "You're gonna tell Walt Jr. or I will. You're gonna tell Walt Jr. about his dad, or I will." And I just felt that was a really dark moment. But in all seriousness, evil of evil, the evilest of evils, I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to go with Jack.
Jack is pretty evil. Okay.
I mean, he just is he's just a redneck evil motherfucker, you know? He doesn't care, and he just doesn't fucking care. So, for those reasons... Yeah.
While you were talking, I just heard that scene, because you got Breaking Bad playing in the background.
Yes, I
heard that scene. I just heard that scene. I tried to save him.
Yeah, actually.
And, man, when I hear that, it just pulls at my heartstrings.
Yeah. Oh, right now, Skylar has just grabbed the knife and she's confronting Walter. Mm-hmm. You know, and get out. And he's trying to just say, "Shut the hell up, let's get in the car and go." And she just isn't having it.
No. And why would she? I mean, she didn't want to go along with it in the first place, but she ended up doing it, and it became a thing. And now it's cost, because it's cost her a family member being dead. No more. You are done. Get out of my life. Yeah, this series has an effect on you. It is a ride. It is a roller coaster ride from beginning to end.
Yeah, and like I said, I as a whole, this is probably the best show I've ever seen. I mean, it's better than Dexter. Yes. As of right now, it's better than the Breaking Bad, or better than The Walking Dead. I can't talk. I mean, Walking Dead is amazing. Don't get me wrong. But there's something about Breaking Bad that you could never turn away. I don't care where I'm at, what I'm doing. If I see Breaking Bad on, most likely I'm going to stop and watch the episode.
It's, as you said, this. I mean, it is such a tight-knit little package, and I'm so glad that with this show, they knew that they were going to be ending the series, and they had an end game. It wasn't one that they just said, "Oh, let's make another season." It just seems like a show like Law & Order, SVU or something. It's been going on for 17 years. What's their end game? Do they have an end game? Do they have an area where they want to go before they end the series? No, it's year to year, it seems like. But with this, it's like, no, we know where we have to go. We know we're not going to be doing this show forever. And it tells just this beautiful and awful destructive story. And as a package, it delivers.
It absolutely delivered, my friend. So, we're at the point now where we've discussed how amazing Breaking Bad was. Breaking Bad will never change. You can't go back in time and rewrite it, obviously. They can do little teasers here at the Emmys and all this stuff where they do little montages with Aaron Paul and Bryan Cranston or whatever, but the magic that those two created along with the entire cast, Anna Gunn, Dean Norris, Betsy Bryant, R.J. Mitty, I'm probably forgetting some people, Giancarlo Esposito, I can't say his name at all. Giancarlo Esposito. Hey, Skylar just broke down in the street. She's, covered in blood and on her knees, so that's dark. And anyways, we can't change Breaking Bad and what has happened and the story they told. But what we can do now is look forward to a new show that Vince Gilligan is writing, which, Brandon, I gotta know, rapid reaction, dude. What do you think about Better Call Saul? We're 2 episodes in here.
I like it so far. I really do.
Yeah, me as well.
And that's something that we didn't talk about too much in the Breaking Bad, in our little episode here, just how good of a character Saul is. And I'm really looking forward to seeing, how he really becomes who he ends up being in Breaking Bad. This series is set a couple years before Breaking Bad starts. He is not Saul Goodman yet. He hasn't changed his name. But The first episode I thought was just a tad bit slow, but I loved how it started. I loved how it was like black and white, and usually they do black and white for like, or you would think it would be like a flashback, but it's really a flash forward.
Yeah. A flash forward to exactly what Saul said he had hoped for. When he's talking to Walter, he goes, if I'm lucky, 6 months from now, I'll be a manager of a Cinnabon in Omaha, Nebraska, you know. And you think that's the most random shit that Saul Goodman could say. And that's exactly what happens to him. And I fucking loved it, you know.
Oh, yeah. And I loved going back. I love the little, he's like the struggling, lawyer doing public defendant work. I love how they have Mike as just like working the gate, and he's got to deal with him, and it's just such a small thing, but I've been thoroughly entertained by that. Of course, they've already introduced a really another major character from the Breaking Bad series.
Spoiler alert!
And spoiler alert! If you have not seen it yet, it is Tuco, and I loved that whole scenario that got played out there.
You weren't even expecting it.
No, and that's what I loved about the first episode is that you're getting a little interested in it. Okay, he's kind of ambulance chasing here, and he's trying to con somebody, and then all of a sudden there's Tuco, and you go, wait a minute, and then the episode's over, and that makes you want to tune into the next one.
Which the next night we get a whole episode with Tuco.
Yeah,
I really loved it. I love that. He has these two guys who are trying to pull a scam on his grandma, and he beats the shit out of them. And, you think they're dead, and even Saul is assuming that they're probably dead, and, Tuco obviously shows them otherwise. And then these kids kind of get themselves in trouble because instead of just shutting the fuck up and just letting things play out, they start going, it was all him, it was all the lawyer, which puts them all in hot water, even more than they were, and they get drug out to the desert, which I thought was, again, very fitting. Here we are, Saul Goodman, part of Breaking Bad, now we're again in the Albuquerque desert, and maybe he's going to die, maybe James McGill is going to die before he even becomes Saul Goodman, but we know that's not how the fucking story goes.
Yeah, no. He's not going to die, but I was so interested in how is he going to get out of it.
Yeah, and you know what? It's crazy because it showed how great of a lawyer he could be. And he even says it. You guys had the death sentence, and I talked it down to 6 months probation.
Yeah. Oh, yes. There's definitely that little tie in there. I enjoyed that. There's another actor in this, and I'm probably going to botch his name. He's a pretty decent actor, and he's been in quite a few things, but he is Michael McKean.
Michael McKean. He's in Airheads and Spinal Tap and anything funny, in the 80s and 90s. Clue.
Oh, yeah. And see, and the thing is that he is playing, I can't remember the first name. I can't remember his first name. I'm looking up Chuck McGill.
Yeah, Chuck. It's James McGill's father.
Yes. And what's interesting is that he doesn't call him Dad. He calls him Chuck.
Yep. And what we come to find out is that Chuck has kind of been outed from his own law firm, and that they're trying to fight it, and the law firm wants to offer them a lot of money, and obviously that's just the bitch way out, in his own opinion. What did you think about the weird cell phone scene? Because I have a theory on this, but I want to know what you thought, and then I'll say what I thought.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. He seems like one of those guys that he has this thing where, like, you remember back in like the late 90s, early 2000s, there was like that whole fear of cell phones.
Yes.
Like usage of giving you tumors, and then there's like it's like Chuck lives inside of this house with no electricity, very minimal things. It's like whenever in the second episode when Saul or Jimmy comes home, he doesn't ground himself and he leaves his cell phone in his pocket when he goes inside the house, and Chuck loses his shit over it. And he grabs it with the tongs and everything and throws it outside. And then when the next morning he's sitting with like the aluminum foil blanket or whatever it was over him, the whole NASA blanket. I mean, I'm not really sure exactly what that's called.
Space blanket?
Well, no. What his affliction is.
Oh, okay. Well, here's my theory, because I don't know what the affliction you're talking about is. But what I kind of saw was, and maybe this is true, maybe it's not, we'll maybe find out this week, I don't know. To me, it seemed like maybe Chuck has a pacemaker, and that the older model cell phone is affecting his heart. Because didn't you notice he started to almost like clench at his chest and act weird towards the cell phone? And then he throws it out the door, and then he's wearing this kind of protective blanket to keep him, from feeling the effects of whatever was, affecting him.
That's an interesting take on that, yeah. I mean, it definitely could be. Maybe he had like a heart attack or something, and it scared him so much that he's been like anything that could possibly interfere with it, he's like eliminated from his life.
Yeah. One thing I thought was interesting, Jimmy McGill trying to go on this date, and he can't stop seeing people break these crackers and shit, and it's fucking with his head,
It's little breadsticks. Yeah,
it's just it's like, oh my god, that's the leg that I just watched get broke on two gentlemen, you know. But I think Better Call Saul is going to be phenomenal. I know that there are a lot of people who have seen the majority of the season, a lot of the different critics and stuff, and they're saying that this show is already going to be better than Breaking Bad ever was, and that's a hard fucking thing to say.
That's a strong sell.
I mean, that's whipping your dick out in front of some really, 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 really high class ladies and going, I can do anything I want. I can do anything I want, So
no, I think it's gonna. I do think it's gonna be great. I think Odenkirk, he's a great actor. I've really enjoyed him in Breaking Bad. I'm enjoying him so far. Better Call Saul. I think it's gonna be great. As far as better than Breaking Bad, that's definitely gonna be objective based, because it's gonna be hard for anything to top Breaking Bad. It's almost like, even though it's great, it's almost like I make it a little bit better in my own head, just because of the attachment I have to it. It's gonna be like someone coming along and saying, my puppy's better than your puppy.
But my puppy's better and more softer.
But it's my puppy. You can't be better than my puppy.
But my puppy sits and gives high fives.
Oh no! But my puppy looks cute and is dumb.
Oh well, then your puppy wins, because dumb puppies always win.
Dude, dumb puppies are cute, but.
All right. Anyways, we're nearing the 2-hour mark, Brando. This has been a really kick-ass special. We got to kind of live through the retrospective moments of some of the greatest television we've ever watched.
Yep.
And it's kind of a shame we didn't have this podcast when we were watching Breaking Bad in real time, because it would have been really fun to get some of the audio from back when we reviewed it in real time to bring back now to have our retrospective. But this is all, a couple of years later, we're talking about it, and Breaking Bad is still very relevant. I see that 20 years from now, they're going to have classes in college about writing like Breaking Bad, and how that's the right way to write a show and write a series and be character-driven and very deep and real and connect with people. That's one thing that made Breaking Bad so amazing. You could connect with these people.
I agree.
So, Brando, you got anything else to say for our Breaking Bad retrospective, sir?
Nothing else other than I'm really looking forward to see what happens with the spinoff for Saul. And I'll be tuning in every week. They've already hooked me.
Yeah, they've got me hooked too. They had me hooked the moment that Tuco poked his head out of that door, man. I said, I never saw it coming. Not even ever,
Yep.
All right, folks. Well, for Journey into Comics, I'm Nate Phillips.
I'm your co-host, Brando Stone.
Man, you got really quiet over there. You all right?
I don't want this to end, man.
What?
No, dude. I was joking. I said I just don't want this to end.
Oh, I know. I don't want it to end either. It's just like Breaking Bad. You just want to kind of keep dragging it on. But anyways, I've got to feed my bellies, so I'm gonna get off here. You folks enjoy this episode of Journey into Comics. Again, I'm Nate. That's Brando, and we'll catch you guys next time.
Later.